Started. So welcome everyone to the Mud Core Dev Call that we do every month on the first Thursday of every month. This is going to be our last event before we go to Istanbul for Dev Connect and Autonomous Worlds Assembly. So you can look forward to some Mud updates from Avarius and Frolic. Yeah, and just before we begin, just want to shout out 0x Hank is our new contributor over the past month. It's been doing some good work, getting some new PRs in there. And as always, you can go to contributors.mud.dev to look for easy first tasks and get started as a Mud contributor. But yeah, otherwise we can get right into the Mud update. Valerius, you want to take it away?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. All right. So as always, we're gonna have two sections in this call. First one is gonna be about on-chain stuff, and then second section is gonna be about some off-chain features. On the on-chain side, as some of you might know if you've been part of the last call, is we currently have a contract audit ongoing, which means our core code base is frozen, like the core contract code base is frozen. We're not doing any changes on there until the end of the audit, which is scheduled for end of November. And then we're gonna obviously fix all the findings of the audit, and then the core can be considered stable essentially, which might be already now. So already now we're not expecting like really breaking changes. Again, like if they find any bugs, then obviously we're gonna fix them. But the core contracts are mostly considered stable, which might be a good thing for everybody who's currently building on it and doesn't have to worry about upgrading to breaking features anymore. But still, because we designed Mud in a modular way, we can still add new features, just not to the core contracts, but as part of as modules basically. And that's what we did over the last couple of weeks. Is we added two new modules, which is the ERC20 module and the ERC721 module. So two token modules. A big disclaimer here, those two are not audited yet, and they're also not part of the audit that's currently ongoing, so they won't be audited end of year either. It's gonna take a while until the next audit, until those are audited. So yeah, only use in experimental features for now, or get them audited yourself if you need them in production use. But yeah, here's how it works. So basically, you get two new utils from those two modules, which is register ERC20 and register ERC721. And then with those utils, you can install those tokens into any world. Actually, it doesn't even have to be your world. You don't have to have any access control on that world. You can just register the tokens into any world, and then that creates a new namespace in that world for the token. And whoever used this register ERC20 util function is then the owner of that namespace and can do whatever, including burning ownership. And then once you register those tokens, you have fully native Mud tokens essentially, which are fully compatible with all Mud features, including hooks, including access control, including account delegation, and everything else that's part of Mud. And also you still get this external, this contract, basically this token that is returned by this function, is an external contract outside of the Mud world, which implements all of the functions for the token and also emits the events, because that's what's required from the ERC20 and ERC721 interface. Again, disclaimer: don't use in production yet, not audited yet. But if you were to use it in an experimental feature, I want to give you some more insight in how it actually works and what's going on the internals. So like I said, you register that token. What you get is that ERC20 Puppet contract. And then for that user that would interact with your token, it looks like this. They interact with that Puppet contract, and for them, this Puppet contract just looks like any other ERC20, ERC721 token. This one implements the interface and also emits the events. But then what actually happens on the inside is this contract only forwards that call to the world, to the system that actually implements the logic and then writes to the respective tables. And then as part of the system basically triggers the Puppet contract to then emit the event. We call this the Puppet pattern because this contract doesn't actually do much except from just forwarding calls and then accepting these emit calls from the world as its quote unquote Puppet master. This Puppet pattern is actually a third module that we added over the last couple of weeks, and both the ERC20 and the ERC721 module are built on top of that other module. So yeah, that's news on the on-chain side. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Frolic to some news on the off-chain side.
Hello. So I have a live demo for this. But basically, we've overhauled our deployment process, our command for tests and the dev runner and the regular deploys to use a declarative deployment approach. And so what that means is basically instead of all this logic living inside to like walk through what to deploy and how to do it, we instead take what you've defined in your mud config and what exists on a given world address and figure out what needs to change in order to bring it up to speed with the mud config definition. So you can either provide it a world address or one will be created if no world address is provided. And so when the deploy runs, it basically looks up that world if it's available and figures out all the changes that are necessary. So adding new tables or adjusting access control or registering these systems. The other nice thing that we've done is all of the modules and system contracts they go through a deterministic deployer, meaning that as long as the bytecode is stable, they will only need to be deployed once per chain. So if you are reusing a module that we've provided, or you have a system that you're constantly deploying, it will only really need to be deployed once, and then we just can register that at a given address for that system or module. So I'm going to show this real quick. Let me share my screen. So let me know if you can see.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to spin up. I just created a fresh template from using the React template. You can see also we've made some adjustments to our dev runner script. We now use this software called mprox that gives you these nice like tabs for each of the process, and we'll probably expand on the number of processes that we run. For example, Anvil might be one of them that lives sort of separately, so you can see Anvil logs a bit better. But we can just see the deploy completed. But if we look through the logs here, we could see sort of like everything that's going on. So it's first making sure that we've deployed all of the different modules and different systems. This only happens once at the beginning of the deploy process and only needs to happen once per contract. It will detect if they've already been deployed. So if I rerun this, it will, and actually let's demonstrate that real quick. If I restart this process and rerun it, oh, actually, I think this is probably going to create a new world because it restarted Anvil. But if I were pointing this to an Anvil instance and giving it a world address that existed, it wouldn't have to do any of these steps. It would skip over them because they've already done. So apologies for not having that prepared to demo. But the other thing, I don't know, Alvarius, if you want to jump to the other slide, or if I should just move on to the ZooStand stuff.
Yeah, the slide only has the headline. We have a ZooStand integration.
Yeah. So we just put out another storage adapter using ZooStand, and so ZooStand is a React. Let's see, ZooStand. This is both a vanilla and React like client storage library. It's very fast, very nice to use. If you're familiar with Redux, you can kind of use it in a Redux way, but you also don't have to. It feels very like, in the React context, feels very much like use state, but just a bigger sort of state tree. But we now have this integrated in a strongly typed way with Mud, so you can set up a sync to ZooStand thing, which I'll show here. So set network. So we've already updated the React template from Mud to use ZooStand as the default storage mechanism. And this is mostly just to reduce, for folks that are familiar with React, reduce the number of concepts you have to learn. So you no longer need to learn about ECS. You can just focus on MUD and React. And so ZooStand uses the concept of tables, or our ZooStand store uses the concept of tables. So we can see, if you're already familiar with setting up MUD, this probably looks familiar. You would usually see this say sync to RECS, but now it says sync to ZooStand. And we pass in the MUD config as usual, and then we get back this use store, which is a hook, but also has some internals where you can talk to the state directly if you're inside of like a vanilla JavaScript context. And then tables, which are the strongly typed tables from our MUD config, including all of the tables that exist in the store and the world libraries, which also exist on your world. So we can see how that's used here. Built a small demo app, which is basically a task list, because everyone loves task lists, right? And chores. So we set up this initial data in our post deploy script, which I can show. So basically, we've got in our MUD config, sorry for jumping around a bunch, but in our MUD config, we've defined this tables tasks table, and we have a couple of properties on that table. And in the post deploy script, we set up some tasks as like kind of a default boilerplate. So you can see that here, and this kind of demonstrates both interacting with tables directly and also talking to different systems. So we have a task system that can add tasks, complete or reset tasks, and then delete them. And so we're calling those here directly from our post deploy. And that's why you're seeing this data here, because we've already during the deploy process, we've already established some initial data. So we can check and uncheck things. And there's no optimistic rendering. So everything you're seeing in terms of load state and everything is coming from the chain. So this is all happening on chain, and we can go ahead and delete one. We can add one and complete it. And yeah, so back to the app, we can see if you're again familiar with React, the usage of the ZooStand store is quite familiar in a React context. So we get back this use store hook from our ZooStand sync to ZooStand library. And in that, you basically get the full state tree, which you can narrow down into just the data that you want. And ZooStand is smart enough to only re-render this as this value changes. So if you're only grabbing a small slice of your data, for example, one record, it won't cause this whole thing to re-render unless that one record is updated. So it's quite efficient and a lot easier, I think, to interact with than RECS. And again, don't have to worry about this notion of components or setting component values or getting component values and stuff like that. It's just a very simple and easy to understand client store. But yeah, in this example, we're using our get records helper on the state object, and we can pass in a table, and so it'll give us back strongly typed records. So we can see that this is an object with these strongly typed records that have these values on them. We're sorting them immediately by their created at timestamp, so we can see them in created at order, and then rendering them down here in tasks. And each one includes an ID, a unique ID that's helpful in a React context, but we also use it internally for normalizing data and updating data. But yeah, a lot of this, like if you've built React apps before, a lot of this will feel very intuitive and very React Native. I mean, React Native as in like, it feels like very default or vanilla React and not some weird abstractions. So hopefully this is a lot easier to use. Excited to hear feedback from anyone that wants to use this. It's we have a release, a next .13 release scheduled for today or tomorrow, so you'll be able to use this very, very soon.
Cool, thank you very much. Let me share my screen again. This was the slide, so you didn't miss much. Cool. Cool. All right. Yeah, that's all for the content of today's Code of Call. As always, here's a couple interesting links that you can visit. You can find the changelog at mod.dev/changelog, and there you can find all the breaking and non-breaking changes in all the pre-release versions. And this will, right now it's at next.12, but we will, like Frolic said, we're going to release a new version today or tomorrow, so that you're going to be able to use all those features that we just told you about. Then there is a couple other interesting links here. If you're interested in contributing to Mud, you can go to contribute.mud.dev, and that's a list with a bunch of issues that are relatively small in scope and don't require a lot of context on the entire system, and so should be easy to get started with. And then on status.mud.dev, you can find an overview of essentially all the features and planned features for Mud and what their status is, and if there's expected changes coming soon to them. And then at newsletter.mud.dev, you can sign up to our new Mud newsletter to stay up to date even more. Cool. That is all. I think maybe Kushaza wanted to say something about this.
Yeah, just wanted to say that we also have a Google Calendar as of the last month that includes all of our community events, such as the Core Dev Call and the community demos, as well as Sky Strife playtests. This will also be updated with some events we have going on with the in Dev Connect in Istanbul. So you can go to that channel. I just linked it in the chat, event calendar, or you can subscribe directly to the Google Calendar. And otherwise, we're going to be in Istanbul. So we're going to be there November 15th and 16th for the Autonomous Worlds Assembly. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everyone there. I believe there might still be some slots open if people haven't registered for the AWA yet. If so, you can visit aw.network/2023 and check that out. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing everyone there who's going to be at Dev Connect. Yeah, we can lead this into our Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts about Mud, feel free to drop it in the chat or come up on stage and ask it personally. Anywhere else to find us except AWA? I'm actually not 100% sure. Are you, Alvarius or Frolic?
Yeah, so we're for sure going to be around in Istanbul in general. So personally, I'm gonna also give a talk at the Solidity Summit, and I think Kushaba and Ludens are also gonna give talks at other events, but I'm not exactly sure which talks and which events.
Can the assets be on chain? Is that something Mud is looking to solve in the future?
Oh, I guess by assets you mean like sprites and graphics and that kind of stuff. Yeah, cool. So there's no real Mud native way to do it yet. In general, you can always put it on chain. In fact, Frolic has a side project to put arbitrary data on chain, is basically. But we haven't built an integration for Mud yet. Would be interesting though.
Yeah, and just a reminder that Mud is just a set of contract abstractions, and so there's nothing keeping you from doing any regular contract type of interaction. So you can definitely store whatever data. There's just no kind of built-in Mud way to do that, and I don't know if we necessarily need one, but open to that.
Could be a module.
Yeah, for sure.
Any plans for Mud native external wallet support? Can you elaborate? Do you mean instead of having a burner wallet, you connecting a quote unquote real wallet and then? Yeah. Okay. Cool. That is definitely on the roadmap. We have it actually. We basically have it ready on the contract side. We played around with client integrations, but we haven't merged them yet. But it's hopefully going to happen very soon. The general idea or the general pattern that we're going there with is account delegation, essentially, which means you have your main wallet and then you delegate access to some kind of session wallet for a limited amount of time. And then that session wallet can execute actions on behalf of your main wallet without requesting permission for every transaction. But also again here, in general, you can use any existing account abstraction tool stack as well with Mud, because it's all just contracts on chain.
Anyone have any other questions?
Atsume raised their hand, I thought.
Yeah, I saw someone raise their hand, but looks like they brought it back down. Oh.
Yep.
There you go. Welcome.
Hi. Sorry, so just want to ask, so let's say, so today we have the ERC 20 and 721 modules, right? So let's say if we want to, add, suggest, or do like a PR for more other standard ERC plugins, like maybe like a Vault, like 4626 or something. So this will be like the standard flow for us to do, right? Like a module, then we plug it to like a Puppet, so that things are all right. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, in general, modules are great for that. You can basically like build any integration you want as part of a module, and then people can install that optionally if they need that. You can definitely build on top of the Puppet module as well, like we did for the ERC20 or ERC20 721 module. But that's not a requirement. Like we even played with a bunch of other approaches for those specific modules, and there might be like the Puppet approach might not be the best for every single module out there. But you can also rely on it if you want to.
Yeah, we mostly did the Puppet approach for the tokens, because there's this expectation for token contracts that each token is also an address or a contract. So we needed some way for your mud world, which is generally like one mud world that encapsulates lots of different kinds of logic, and we needed a way to represent a token, so you could have more than one token per world. So that's where the Puppet comes in. It's just kind of a holder of an address in a way.
Right. So let's say in future, like it gets deployed, like the world contracts and stack get deployed on other chains, or like if there's an explorer to look at like the contract APIs, that then the Puppet would be like more useful, right? Or is there any plans for like integration with explorers?
Yeah, so basically what you would see on a block explorer where you would like verify the ABI is essentially like the Puppet is kind of very similar to a proxy, if you're familiar with that. So it's just a very lean contract that forwards calls to another contract that lives inside of the world. So you would be able to like upload all of those contracts, verify all of those contracts. Actually, maybe little shout out at this point. The Small Brain Games just released Draw Tech yesterday, and they for example verified all of their MUD contracts on Basescan. So you can check that out and see how it would look like. One limitation there, and that's a limitation with any kind of proxy pattern on chain, is that if like that static verification of ABI basically can't verify that the proxy address, which is data that lives on chain, is actually like pointing to that address that you verified. You can check that manually by looking at the storage slots basically. But those those contract API verification features just don't have that built in. It's like not on the highest on our priority list, but it would be technically feasible to build an explorer or like an ABI verification kind of thing for proxy contracts as well, that basically also looks at the chain state at that point in time and sees if the implementation actually matches.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Yeah.
And T-Pay asked, how do we earn the MUD community titles? I answered in chat, but I'll just say it out loud too, which is to become a MUD tinkerer, all you need to do is have a repo building a project on MUD, and then just let us know. We'll give you the title, the role. And then the MUD builder role is kind of the same, except for it's like serious people and teams building projects that have traction, users in production, or just a robust code base and the functioning product. All right. Do we have any other questions? Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, that's about it then. So thank you everyone for attending. Like I said, this was our last online event before we're going to be on Istanbul. So just keep an eye on the community calendar and on the announcements, and we'll be in touch for our next online event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.